Now, a security group. A security group acts as a virtual firewall controlling the traffic that is allowed to reach and leave the resources that it is associated with. For example, after you associate a security group with an EC2 instance, it controls the inbound and outbound traffic for the instance. When you create a VPC, it comes with a default security group. You can create additional security groups for each VPC. You can associate a security group only with the resources in the VPC for which it is created. For each security group, you add rules that control the traffic based on protocols and port numbers. There are separate set of rules for inbound traffic and outbound traffic. You might set up network ACLs with rules similar to your security groups in order to add an additional layer of security to your VPC. The characteristics of security groups include: when you create a security group, you must provide it with a name and a description. A security group name must be unique within the VPC. Names and descriptions can be up to 255 characters in length. Names and descriptions are limited to the characters small a to z, capital A to z, 0 to 9, space, and some special symbols. When the name contains trailing spaces, we trim the space at the end of the name. A security group cannot start with SG. Security groups are stateful. For example, if you send a request from an instance, the response traffic for that request is allowed to reach the instance regardless of the inbound security group. Responses to allowed inbound traffic are allowed to leave the instance regardless of the outbound rules. There are quotas on the number of security groups that you can create per VPC. The number of rules that you can add to each security group and the number of security groups that you can associate with a network interface. Each rule is comprised of 5 fields: type, protocol, port range, source, and description for both inbound and outbound rules. For security group rules, you can specify allow rule but not deny the rules. When you first create a security group, it has no inbound rules. Therefore, no inbound traffic is allowed until you add inbound rules to the security group. When you first create a security group, it has an outbound rule that allows all the outbound traffic from the resource. You can remove the rule and add outbound rules that allow specific outbound traffic only. If your security group has no outbound rules, no outbound traffic is allowed. When you associate multiple security groups with a resource, the rules from each security group are aggregated to form a single set of rules that are used to determine whether to allow access. When you add, update, or remove rules, your chains are automatically applied to all the resources associated with the security group. The effect of some rule chains can depend on how the traffic is tracked. When you create a security group rule, AWS assigns a unique ID to the rule. You can use ID of a rule when you use the API or CLI to modify or delete the rule. Your default VPCs or any VPCs that you create come with a default security group. Within some resources, if you do not associate a security group when you create the resource, we associate the default security group. For example, if you do not specify a security group, when you launch an EC2 instance, we associate the default security group. You can change the rules for a default security group. You cannot delete a default security group. If you try to delete a default security group, you can get an error, client.cannot delete. The rules of a security group control the inbound traffic that's allowed to reach the resources that are associated with the security group. The rules also control the outbound traffic that's allowed to leave them. You can add or remove rules for a security group, also referred to as authorizing or revoking inbound or outbound access. A rule applies either to inbound traffic, ingress, or outbound traffic, that is egress. You can grant access to a specific CIDR range or to another security group in your VPC or in a pair VPC. Requires a VPC pairing connection. For each rule, you specify the following. First is the protocol. The protocol to allow. The most common protocols are 6 for TCP, 17 for UDP, and 1 for ICMP. Port range. For TCP, UDP, or a custom protocol, the range of ports to allow. You can specify a single port number, for example, 22, or range of port numbers, for example, 7,000 to 8,000. ICMP type of code. For ICMP, the ICMP type in code, for example, use type 8 for ICMP echo request or type 128 for ICMPv6 echo request. Then source or destination. The source inbound rules or destination outbound rules for the traffic to allow. A single IPv4 address, you must use \32 prefix length. A single IPv6 address, you must use the \128 prefix length. A range of IPv4 addresses in the CIDR block notations. A range of IPv6 addresses in CIDR block notations. The ID of a prefix list. The ID of a security group referred to here as specified security group. For example, the current security group from the same VPC or the security group for a peered VPC. This allows traffic based on the private IP addresses of the resources associated with the specified security group. This does not add the rules from the specified security group to the current security group. And then we have the description. You can add a description for the rule, which can help you identify it later. A description can be up to 255 characters in length. If you configure routes to forward the traffic between two instances, in different subnets through a middle box appliance, you must ensure that the security groups for both instances allow traffic to flow between the instance. The security group for each instance must reference the private IP address to the other instance or the CIDR range of the subnet that contains the other instance as the source. If you reference the security group of the other instance as the source, this does not allow the traffic to flow between the instance. If your VPC has a VPC peering connection with another VPC, or if it uses a VPC shared by another account, a security group rule in your VPC can reference a security group in that peer VPC or the shared VPC. This allows the resources that are associated with the referenced security group and those that are associated with the referencing security group to communicate with each other. You can delete stale security group rules as you would any other security group rule. So in order to work with the security groups, the tasks include: we create a security group, we view our security group, we tag our security groups, and finally, we can delete the security group. As far as creating a security group, by default, a new security group starts with only an outbound rule that allows all traffic to leave the resource. You must add rules to enable any inbound traffic or to restrict the outbound traffic. So in order to create security group using the console, we open the Amazon VPC console app. In the navigation pane, we'll choose security groups. We'll click on create security group. We'll enter a name and description for the security group. You cannot change the name and the description of the security group after it's created. So we'll give a name, vProfile, ELB, SG. We'll add some description here. Say security group. For VPC, we will click add some rules. HTTP anywhere. We'll add rule. Say we'll add one more rule, that is HTTPS. Anywhere, sources anywhere. We can delete it. And then we'll add save. In the similar manner, we can create a security group for Tomcat instance. It has been successfully created. It has been successfully created. Now we'll again create a security group for Tomcat instance. That means again, we'll go into the navigation pane, we'll choose security groups, we'll create security group for the Tomcat instance. And we'll name it vProfile app SG, that is security group for Tomcat instance. Will add rule, say custom TSP, port range will be, it is custom, port range will be 8080. It will allow traffic from our load balancer. So we shall select security group of load balancer and we will create security group. Again, we'll create the security group for backend services. We'll name it as vProfile backend SG. Add some description like security groups or backend services. We'll add rule, MySQL, it will be 3306 and we'll create the security group. This is how the security groups have been created. We can easily view information about our security groups. And in the same way, we can easily add tags to our resources in order to help organize and identify them, such as by purpose, by owner, or by environment. We can add tags to our security groups. Tag keys must be unique for each security group. If you add a tag with a key that is already associated with the rule, it updates the value of that tag. And in the similar manner, we can delete a security group. We can delete a security group only if it is not associated with any resource. And if it is the case, we can delete it. If you are using the console, you can delete more than one security group at a time. If you are using command line or the API, you can delete only one security group at one time.